Hello and welcome to another episode of Blogging for Programmers. Today I want to talk about a topic that is very important, and that is do your own work. Okay. And a little bit of this is going to be AI involved, but let's start out with the obvious. Write your own words. Don't directly plagiarize. There are many, many, many examples of people who take entire blogs, entire articles, copy them, put them on their website, slap their name on it and say, I wrote this. That's bad. Don't do that. Don't even think about doing that. Don't even just listen to me and go, Lewis said that's a good idea. He mentioned it, so it must be a good idea. Don't do that. Okay. Don't even somewhat do that. All right. And we're past that. We're not putting our name on somebody else's work. So what about AI? Well, AI can write entire blogs for you. It can, and it can do an okay job. You can feel that it's AI. You can feel that it's not quite right, but it can do a pretty decent job. Don't do that either. Don't put your name on that. You might be able to get away with that. Again, not trying to give ideas here, but you might be able to get away with that, but don't do that for big reasons. Again, back to number one, do this for yourself. Learn something out of it. I'm not, by the way, saying don't use AI. We'll talk about that in a second. I will say this. The next thing people often do is plagiarize parts of articles or documentation. So you write an article on something like the settings in SQL Server. These are the database scoped configurations or whatever. The enums for something in C#. Any of those things are possible. And you write, so you start out and you tell people why they should know these. And then you go to the documentation, you're looking at it, you're thinking, they said it really well. I'm going to just copy it, put it down in my blog. And I'm not going to put who wrote it. Okay. If you're going to use some bits of text, sometimes that's okay. But there are some things you can quote. And you put it in quotes, you say, this is from the documentation. And that's great. And maybe you're trying to clarify something and emphatically state it's true. So you link to it, you put it down and you say, this is what Microsoft says, or this is what Google says, or this is what Oracle says. So you have that information, and that's, quoting something to say, this is exactly what it said is okay. That's not plagiarism unless you do too much of it. But don't take this list of settings and just use their exact terms. When you're writing a blog, you need to write more than what documentation can tell you. The thing about documentation is it's a breadth kind of thing. They have to talk about every single setting. They have to explain at this level, right, what each thing does. And if you look at any command in any language, there's always going to be this path that you really want to use, maybe a few alternatives. And then there's going to be maybe 10, 20, 100 different other things you can do, but you wouldn't likely do. And then there's probably some things you just really shouldn't do. No, you can do it, but don't do it. It's like your car. You can go out and drive your car to the grocery store, and that's great. You can drive it 175 miles an hour to the grocery store, even though it's only a half mile away, but you shouldn't, right? There's just things you shouldn't do. So what am I saying? Take your writing, take your thoughts and write them down. If you don't quite know how to say something, use AI, use anything you can, use friends, use help, read more documents, read other people's blogs. I'll talk about that a little bit later in another tip about using other people's blogs and things as ideas. But don't just sit there and say, I can't write it, right? Use your AI. It's great stuff these days. Grammar. I don't want to learn how commas work. So, and I know they work certain ways. I'm much happier to just say, okay, the editor thing says a comma goes here. I'm going to trust it. And I 99% of the time, I'm going to just take its word for it if I've gotten it wrong. It's great for, word tenses, spelling, etc. It's also good for inspiration. If you want to write something about, how to write, like say you want to do something on writing and you think, I don't really know how to get into this. And you ask AI, say, give me some ideas on how to write about blogging or tell people how to blog and you can ask it to give you inspiration. That's great. Fantastic use of it. It's pulling from more sources than you're ever going to be able to read. Well, often it's not going to be what you want it to be, or it's going to be a nice framework to get started with. I personally didn't like the inspiration it gave me for this series because I'm trying to talk to people who don't want to be, you're not a professional writer. You want to be a professional doer who then writes a little bit of information for others to use and for you to look at in 5-10 years when you have to do that same task again and you've completely forgotten how it works. And they were, make sure you know the grammar and make sure you have the structure correct. And I'll talk about structure eventually because structure is important to writing, but it's not the most important thing. And that's actually what will be coming up very soon in the series is what is the most important thing when you're a programmer writing a blog about programming. Use it for sample data. Use it for code. If you need some code that's like you want to analyze some code, ask AI to write you just a crazy bit of sample code, and it will. It will give you some really funny stuff. And it'll analyze your code. And sometimes if you have written something freaking ugly just for a point and you say, analyze this, it'll go, you must be kidding. I wrote a few blogs on this. I never finished them because I stopped writing there, but, and I didn't feel like continuing it yet. But I made some ugly code and I asked AI to check it out and it read it and it was like, this appears to be satire. And it was in some way. I was mostly testing to see if the AI would know it was not the correct thing. Use it for learning new things. I mean, don't trust it. I was in a discussion just today on a post someone had put. I think it was Brent Ozar put this out, about AI and how it helps, but it doesn't help. Sometimes it's really great. Sometimes it's really terrible. That is so true. And one of the things I tend to believe is that if you know what you're doing, if you can validate what AI does, then you are in control. Say you have it write a query, you have to write a blog, you have it to build something, even a picture. When you get that picture, when you get that code, when you get that text, if you rewrite it, you edit it, you make sure it's exactly what you wanted to say and how you wanted to say it, it's completely okay. That's the way you're using it. You're not faking it. You know what you said, you know what you did. And I would suggest everything you get from AI, you completely rewrite and you get it to the place where you're happy and you use it to learn new things and, have a sort of a back and forth where you say, how do you do this? And it says, do this. You go do it like it says, see if it works. If it doesn't work, you go back to the AI and go, that didn't work. But you've learned something because when you can say a piece of code doesn't work, and not just it doesn't compile or something, if it doesn't do what it was supposed to do, you've learned something. And it's kind of like I've always said, you learn from your failures. Well, you also learn from other failures that you figured out were failures. So I hope this helps. Do your own work. Don't try to cheat. Don't try to take the easy way. It does. How do I put this? It's better a bad blog than a blog that isn't yours. And hopefully I can make that into a quote because that's what I want to say. Better to do a bad blog than for it not to be your blog at all. All right. Next time.